Brian, can you hear me? Brian?
Test.
There you go. I got it. Thank you.
I cannot hear you.
You can't hear me.
Try something else.
Okay. Dominique, can you hear me?
Yes, Megan, I can hear
Okay.
you. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for checking on me.
Sure.
Megan, it's John. I got 9:31. Do we want to give Brian a minute to try to sort out the audio issue, or?
Yes, sir. We're trying. He can't hear anything. I'm working with him right now.
All right. Well, we'll start the meeting in just a few minutes to try to work out this technical issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, we're good, I think.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, with that, good morning, everyone. This is John Neerman. It is my pleasure to call this meeting of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality to order. Today is Wednesday, August 26, 2020. The time is 9:32, and I'll begin with the roll call. Commissioner Lindley, I can see you. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Commissioner Janeka, good morning.
Good morning.
Our commissioners are all present, and how about our general counsel? Ms. Smith, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Good morning. And our public interest counsel?
Good morning, I'm here.
Good morning, Mr. McWhirter. I'd like to remind folks to keep their phones on mute when they're not speaking. I'd also like to remind anyone who is here only to listen that they can watch the meeting online, and that link is available on the agenda notice. For each item where argument or discussion is allowed, we will inform speakers of their time limits. The registration to speak is now closed, but if you would like to address the commission on a particular item, please email us at, and the email address is agenda@tceq.texas.gov, and include your name, your affiliation, and the item you'd like to speak on, and we'll do our best to accommodate either I or our general counsel have asked you to begin speaking, and please check to make sure that your line is unmuted before you speak. Colleagues, before we call the first item, I'd like to just make a note of where we are in this very challenging summer. We have dual challenges in the ongoing pandemic, which at this point has already claimed the lives of over 11,000 of our fellow Texans and over 176,000 lives nationally. We're also on the eve of landfall of Hurricane Laura, which is forecast to become a Category 4 hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico this afternoon and make landfall near the Texas-Louisiana border late tonight or early tomorrow morning. This hurricane is going to be a much more serious threat than Hurricane Hannah that we experienced last month. And I want to encourage our staff as they pull back assets, lockdown assets, protect themselves from the onslaught of the storm. And I want to assure the public that we, together with our local, state, and federal agency partners, are poised to surge assets back into the affected areas as soon as it's safe to do so. I want to thank our staff and all of our other governmental partners for mobilizing and being ready to take on whatever challenges we may face in terms of restoring drinking water systems, restoring wastewater systems to operation, assessing our critical infrastructure, addressing any hazardous material releases, any uncontrolled air emissions, and then ultimately, in the aftermath, managing all the debris for what could be a pretty heavy debris load coming out of this storm. So, and of course, while we're doing this, ever mindful that we have to maintain social distancing, wash our hands, wear our face masks, and do everything that we can to interrupt the transmission of this COVID virus. So I just thought it was important at this point to pause and acknowledge where we are and send words of encouragement to our staff and our partners in these disasters. So let me pause there and ask my colleagues if they have any observations or anything they'd like to share before we call the first item.
I don't have a whole lot to say. I would echo everything you said. Been at the agency long enough, unfortunately, and all three of us have, to see us go through hurricane responses, and wish we didn't have to do it again. But I know our staff is going to be prepared and ready, and the folks that are going to be most affected by this, as far as our staff, are probably not tuning in and watching today because they're doing all the preparations they need to do, and hopefully they're doing it in their personal lives too, because that's the number one most important thing to all three of us. I know I say that on all of our behalfs, is that the safety of our employees is first and foremost. And with 2020 already being the year it is, they've already done so much and been so accommodating, and just really proud of how our agency has weathered, maybe that's not the best word to use, handled this year. And I hate that we have another challenge in front of us, but we always rise to the occasion on this. And I'm already proud of the work I know they're going to put in over the next couple of hours, over the next couple of days. And I hope that the next time we're all three together at our next agenda, we're able to just brag like we normally get to brag about our staff and all the great things they've done. So I already look forward to getting to do that, because I know they're going to do an outstanding job for all of Texas over the next couple of days.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioner Lindley. I just want to say thank you both for the thoughtful words and taking the moment to acknowledge where we are at. And I could not agree more with all your words about the phenomenal efforts of our staff, but also the challenges, the real unique challenge ahead in the next 24 to 48 hours. And I will be standing ready with all of y'all and the rest of our agency to try to support, and hope all of our Texans and other neighbors in our state at this time are all safe from both fronts of the unique challenge 2020 has given us. So thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. I appreciate you taking that little detour from our normal agenda along with me. I thought it was important to acknowledge where we are. I want to thank everybody who's joined us and are present here today. And with that, Ms. Smith, I'll ask you to please call the first item.
Item number 1 is the application by Great Escapes Opportunity Zone Fund, LLC, for a new Texas Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit number WQ 00158020001. The parties have been notified that the commissioners will not take oral argument, but may ask questions. We have several people signed in and available for questions, and their presence will be noted for the record.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And for the benefit of those of you who are not familiar with our process, we have a two-part analysis for considering requests for contested cases. First, we consider whether the requesters have met both the procedural and substantive requirements to be entitled to a contested case. And then, assuming that at least one requester meets the requirements, we then consider which issues are appropriate to refer for hearing. So part 1 is about who gets a hearing, and part 2 is about which issues are referred. Requesters who are affected in a manner different from the general public and who have articulated personal concerns that are also relevant and material to the permit and have done so both in timely comments and a timely hearing request are entitled to a hearing. So colleagues, we have several hearing requests on this item, but just 2 in my analysis have met the requirements. And I'm going to recommend that we grant the requests of John Leader and Jerry Douglas and that we deny the rest. The only other requester that met the March 30 deadline for comment is Mr. Volker. However, he raised only issues of off-site and downstream erosion, which is a local government issue and is outside our jurisdiction. I'll also note that Mr. Reeves did make timely comments, but he did not request a hearing. So let me pause right there and see if that's consistent with how you came out on the parties. Commissioner Lindley?
Yes, I will say at first blush, when I first started reading this item, I at first agreed with the executive director, but after diving in a little bit deeper, I do agree that it is probably appropriate to refer those 2 gentlemen to a SOA hearing. So this one was kind of on the line for me, but I did come down on the side of agreeing to grant a hearing request for those 2 gentlemen as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Janeka?
Smack dab in alignment with where each of y'all are on this.
All right, then let's turn to the issues. And again, for the benefit of those who are not familiar with our process, we refer issues of fact that have been timely raised by an affected person and that are relevant and material to the application. And put another way, the issues just simply have to be within our jurisdiction on this type of application. So here I would refer 3 issues: whether the draft permit is protective of the health of the requesters and the environment, whether the draft permit is protective of livestock and other terrestrial life, and whether the draft permit complies with the applicable requirements for nuisance odors. And let's begin with you, Commissioner Lindley. Did I capture what you captured?
You did. I completely agree.
Commissioner Janeka?
Likewise, I found those 3 matters, the issues as well.
Okay, and then the remaining issues, I understand that there have been some ongoing negotiations on this outside of the ADR process, so I would not include an ADR referral here. Issues that were raised in a request for reconsideration have already been addressed in the executive director's response to comment, so I would deny the request for reconsideration. And consistent with our recent practice, given where we are, I would allow the full 180 days for SOA to do its work on this item. How's that sound?
Perfect from my end.
Sounds good. I can make a motion trying to capture all that.
Please do.
We grant the hearing request of John Leader and Jerry Douglas, that we deny all other hearing requests and requests for consideration, and refer the application to SOA for a contested case hearing concerning the following issues: A, whether the draft permit is adequately protective of the health of the requesters, their families, and the environment; B, whether the draft permit is protective of terrestrial life, including livestock; and C, whether the draft permit complies with applicable requirements to abate and control nuisance odors as set forth in 30 Texas Administrative Code 309.13E, and set the hearing duration for the proceeding at 180 days from the date of the preliminary hearing to the issuance of the proposal for decision.
I second the motion.
The motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Item number 2 is the consideration of the appeal filed by Dimmitt Central Appraisal District regarding the positive use determination issued by the Executive Director on application number 23065. The Commission's rules provide that a person seeking a determination and the Chief Appraiser may testify at the Commission meeting at which the appeal is considered. By letter dated June 22nd, 2020, OGC allotted 5 minutes each for oral argument time and set the following order for oral presentations. the appellant, Dimmitt Central Appraisal District, the applicant, Black Mountain Sand Eagle Ford, LLC, the ED, and then OPIC. The appellant may reserve time for rebuttal as it bears the burden of proof.
Thank you. Is there someone on the line to represent Dimmitt Central Appraisal District?
Yes, Commissioner. My name is Barry Gaines. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Lowe, Swinney, Evans, and James, and we represent the Dimmitt Central Appraisal District.
Thank you. Good to hear your voice this morning, and we're ready for your argument. If you want to go ahead, and be mindful that you can reserve some of your 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you. This shouldn't take very long. I want to first thank the Commission for letting us appear by telephone. As you mentioned before, there's a lot going on right now, and I happen to be located in Houston, Texas, so I am very grateful for the ability to appear this morning. The issue that brought forth the Dimmitt Central Appraisal District's appeal in this matter has been resolved by the parties pursuant to an agreement through 1.111E of the tax code. So at this point, the use determination no longer impacts the application for an exemption in 2020. And so I don't want to waste anyone's time this morning making argument about your positive use determination and whether or not we agree with it or disagree with it, because at this point, it won't make a difference to my client. But I'm happy to answer any questions or clear up anything for you all if that's necessary at this point.
I appreciate that. I don't think I have any questions at this point. Commissioner Lindley, any questions?
No, thank you.
And Commissioner Janeka, any questions?
I guess the only question about this matter, this particular instance in my mind, Ms. Gaines, is that simply, does this leave any potential concern in your mind for future potential for mishaps in our agency's work to try to work with appraisal districts across the state to assess and try to make determinations on these sorts of tax matters in the future? I don't know if there's a particular timing concern, and I guess I'll just make the request, and if there are any concerns that you make, you contact my office so that I can take a look at it moving forward. I appreciate your wanting to make it clear that the matter is no longer a pressing for y'all for this tax year, but I think for future tax years, if the time period that our agency in trying to be responsive to the needs of entities that we regulate or that may be seeking to get these various tax abatements, I think we're always going to work to respond quickly. And in this case, it appears to me that maybe our rules are clear about a deadline beyond which you're not entitled to anything, but we were maybe able to get our response moved quicker than would have been anticipated there. If that poses a problem, I would really love to know about it going forward. Otherwise, I appreciate your remarks today. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, we would absolutely be willing to discuss any sort of, I guess, cooperation with your office as far as discussing time periods. You could reach out directly to me, or I'm happy to contact your office if that's what you would like. But I certainly appreciate y'all's thoughtful consideration on all of this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gaines. And we'll hear next from the applicant. Is there someone to represent the applicant on the line?
There is. Commissioner, this is Kelly Roach. I'm the General Counsel at the Black Mountain Sand.
Good morning, Ms. Roach. Good to hear your voice, and please go ahead when you're ready.
Oh, we would stand is exactly where Ms. Gaines just said that we believe this thing has been resolved at the moment, and there's nothing right to discuss today.
Appreciate that. Pretty clear position. I have no questions. Commissioner Lindley, any questions for Ms. Roach?
No questions. Thank you.
And Commissioner Janeka?
Sorry, I lost my mic button. No questions. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, Commissioner. And we'll hear next from the Executive Director.
Good morning, Commissioners. On behalf of the Executive Director, I'm Don Redmond with the Environmental Law Division. With me is Elizabeth Sartain of the Air Quality Division. And based on this morning's presentations, it does still sound like there's an appeal before you. And so the Executive Director recommends that the Commission deny the appeal and affirm the Executive Director's use determination. Executive Director's staff reviewed the Black Mountain Sand application for the dust collection system and determined that the equipment is used wholly for the control of pollution to meet the state regulation and is eligible for 100% use determination. We have reviewed the Appraisal District's appeal and the information provided in their reply brief, and we continue to recommend that you affirm the use determination and deny the appeal. Thank you. We're available for questions.
Thank you. I'm still trying to formulate or articulate a question, but while I think through that, I'll invite my colleagues to chime in. Commissioner Lindley, any questions for staff on this?
No, I think I might need just a quick, I don't even know, 5 minute, maybe 2 or 3 minute pause. I don't see a reason why we wouldn't move forward today with what's in denying the appeal. But if it's possible, I'd like to just take a maybe a 2 minute pause, not a long one, just a real quick one.
Commissioner, maybe before we break, and I think it's a good idea that we do take a break, let me ask Ms. Gaines if it's the intention of the Appraisal District to withdraw their appeal today. I think we're ready to act on the appeal today. That's what's teed up before us. But if it's their intention to withdraw their appeal, and that can be done lawfully in this forum, we might consider that as another option rather than taking action on the appeal. Ms. Gaines, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, yes, Commissioner. I can certainly withdraw the appeal. My understanding from speaking with your chief clerk, who was extremely helpful, is that I would really need to do so in writing, and I can certainly do that, but I don't know procedurally what that involves for you all, whether that means you need to you put this off until you can consider something I file in writing. But just from the Appraisal District's position, whether we withdraw the appeal or you rule on the appeal at this point, the issue for which we needed to file the appeal has been resolved. So we will move forward in whatever way is, most efficient. If you all want to give me some guidance on that, that'd be helpful. But whether or not the use determination is granted at this point, the issue for 2020, which was the purpose of us appealing, has been resolved.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gaines. That helps quite a bit. I think now would be a good time for us to take a short break and gather our thoughts on this, confer with counsel, see what we think is going to be the best path forward, and then reconvene. Why don't we take 5 minutes to do that?
Chairman,
yeah.
Before you do that, would you like to hear from OPIC first?
Yes. Mr. McWhorter, what are your thoughts?
Good morning, Chairman. This is Garrett Arthur, and good morning to the other commissioners. I'm representing OPIC today, and if this is a withdrawal situation, we would certainly have no objection to that. However, given that as I'm speaking, there is a pending appeal, I do have some remarks on that. I think it's still worth noting that the date the application is filed can't invalidate the ED's positive use determination. Under 30 TAC section 17.10C, an application postmarked later than January 31 is processed as a lower priority, but regardless of whether the resulting use determination can be applied to the current tax year or must be deferred to the next, the use determination is still valid. OPIC finds that the timing of the BMS application is not a basis for the Commission to remand the matter to the ED for a new determination. Regarding appellants' arguments concerning the sufficiency of the application. The application was submitted as a Tier 1 application, meaning the property can qualify as a type listed on the Tier 1 table. A Tier 1 application also means the property is used wholly for pollution control purposes when used as described in the table and no marketable product arises from using the property. If a property item is listed, it is included in the Tier 1 table, then the Commission has already determined that the item is used wholly for pollution control purposes, assuming it is used as described in the table and no marketable product arises from its use. The record here indicates that a marketable product does not arise from use of the BMS property, and the property is used as described in the table. Therefore, the appeal is insufficient to overcome the finding which the Commission necessarily made prior to placing the property type on the Tier 1 table.
Thoughts on the best procedure moving forward, whether we try to coordinate a withdrawal of the appeal or if we move forward to act on the appeal. I've got 9:56 currently. Why don't we plan to reconvene at 10 o'clock and continue our discussion on the item then? So it's again 9:56 and we're in recess until 10 o'clock. So colleagues, I have 10:01, and as soon as you're back, I'll be ready to resume, but not to rush you.
Sorry, thanks. Webcam both here.
That's all right. All right, the time is 10:01, and we're back on the record after a short recess, and we're continuing discussion on item 2 concerning Dimmitt Central Appraisal District's appeal of a use determination. Colleagues, it seems to me, I had a chance to sort through this and confer with counsel. It seems to me that since it really sounds like it doesn't make a difference to the appellant, whether we pursue a withdrawal or actually act on it, procedurally, the most efficient thing we can do here, I think, is going to be for us just to go ahead and take action on the appeal. And I wanted to propose that path and see what you all think.
I'm in agreement. What we should do today, here and now, and like I said earlier, move forward with denial.
Thank you. Commissioner Janeka?
Good at proceeding in denial today.
Okay. I guess before we entertain a motion or any further discussion amongst the three of us, the appraisal district did reserve some time for rebuttal. So, Ms. Gaines, if you have anything to add, now's your time to do it. And if not, that's fine too.
Thank you. Not at this time.
Okay. Thank you for that. And colleagues, I agree. I think the executive director and OPIC in particular laid out the analysis quite well. Section 1710C regarding timeliness, operates just as they described, and I think the application adequately supports the determination. So I believe I'm where you are, that we ought to deny this appeal, and I'll entertain any further discussion or a motion.
I'm happy to make that motion. I would move we deny the appeal of Dimmitt Central Appraisal District and affirm the executive director's positive use determination on application number 23065.
I second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka, how do you vote?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Items 3 and 4 will be considered together. They are the consideration for adoption of one draft total maximum daily load and implementation plan for indicator bacteria in the Karankawa Bay of the Colorado-Lavaca Coastal Basin. The executive director's staff is here to present this item.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. For the record, I am Chris Sloft with the Total Maximum Daily Load Program in the Office of Water. With me today are Jasmine Milford with the Total Maximum Daily Load Program and Stephanie Scogan with the Environmental Law Division. Today, the Executive Director is respectfully requesting the consideration for final adoption of one Total Maximum Daily Load and final approval of one implementation plan for indicator bacteria in Karankawa Bay. The TMDL covers one assessment unit in one stream segment within Calhoun, Jackson, Wharton, and Matagorda counties. A stakeholder group was formed with balanced representation of all interested parties and was tasked with providing input on the TMDL and making decisions regarding implementation of the TMDL. The success of this project is due to the collaborative effort of the individuals and organizations that put in the time to develop these documents to improve water quality in their communities. The Executive Director respectfully requests the adoption of the Total Maximum Daily Load and approval of the implementation plan. Permission is also requested to make non-substantive changes and clerical corrections. Thank you, and we're available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Loft. I have none. Commissioner Lindley?
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Janeka?
Thanks, none for me.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, has anyone signed in to speak on these two items, I guess?
No one's registered on these items.
Okay, thank you. And the Office of Public Interest Counsel?
Good morning, Vic McWhorter. For the record, OPIC recommends adoption of one maximum daily load for indicator bacteria and the corresponding implementation plan for Karankawa Bay as presented by the Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. McWhorter. And I want to begin by thanking our staff and both the Texas Water Resources Institute and Texas A&M AgriLife for their collaboration and work on the TMDL and the I-Plan. I appreciate the inclusive stakeholder process in helping to improve our water quality. Colleagues, I think we should adopt both the TMDL and the I-Plan, and I'm happy to hear your thoughts, comments, or emotion.
I'm in agreement, and I can make a motion, or if there's any other comments to be made.
I fully concur. Please proceed with the motion,
Yeah.
Commissioner.
And I just echo the chairman's comments about appreciating all of staff's work on this and the stakeholder involvement. These are highly technical projects, and I'm always very impressed, as we all are, with the work that goes into them. So with that, I would move that we adopt the total maximum daily load and the corresponding implementation plan for indicator bacteria in Karankawa Bay in the Colorado-Lavaca Coastal Basin as recommended by the Executive Director.
I second that motion.
The motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Item number 5 is the consideration for adoption of 23 draft total maximum daily loads for indicator bacteria, dissolved oxygen, and pH in Adams Bayou, Cow Bayou, and associated tributaries of the Sabine River Basin. The Executive Director's staff is here to present.
Hello.
Hi, good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. For the record, I am Roger Miranda with the Total Maximum Daily Load Program in the Office of Water. With me today are Chris Loft with the Total Maximum Daily Load Program and Stephanie Scogan of the Environmental Law Division. Today, the Executive Director is respectfully requesting the consideration for final adoption of 23 total maximum daily loads for indicator bacteria, dissolved oxygen, and pH in Adams Bayou, Cow Bayou, and associated tributaries. The TMDLs cover 14 assessment units in 8 stream segments within Jasper, Newton, and Orange counties. The TMDLs included in the document for which we are requesting final adoption are revisions of TMDLs adopted by the Commission and approved by EPA in 2007. The TMDLs were revised because TCEQ began using an approach that subdivides water quality segments into assessment units for assessment of water quality. The assessment unit approach is currently used in TMDL development, but was not available in 2007. Therefore, TMDL allocations by segment rather than by assessment unit were used in the EPA-approved 2007 TMDLs. The 2007 TMDLs were also determined by model scenarios involving reductions from existing pollutant loadings rather than from fully permitted loading scenarios, which is inconsistent with current practice. Additionally, bacteria TMDLs for freshwater and tidal streams are presently based on empirical load duration curve analysis rather than deterministic computer models such as the ones used to develop the 2007 TMDLs for these water bodies. For these reasons, TCEQ has updated the TMDLs adopted in 2007. The TCEQ convened a group of watershed stakeholders as part of its effort to keep stakeholders informed of TCEQ's decision to revise the TMDLs and keep them apprised of the progress of the revisions. The Executive Director respectfully requests the adoptions of the total maximum daily loads. Permission is also requested to make non-substantive and clerical corrections. Thank you, and we are available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Miranda. I appreciate the presentation. I have no questions. Commissioner Lindley, any questions?
No questions. Thanks for the work that went into this one, too.
Commissioner Janeka?
Likewise, none. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, has anyone signed in to speak on this item?
We don't have anyone registered for this one.
Thank you, and we'll hear from OPIC now.
OPIC recommends adoption of these TMDLs as presented by the Executive Director.
Thank you. And again, I want to begin by thanking, in this case, the Orange County TMDL Stakeholder Advisory Group and all of its members, as well as the Sabine River Authority for their contributions to this project, and of course our staff for their great work as well. Colleagues, I'm ready to move ahead with adoption on this, and I'll invite any additional comments or a motion.
Looking for a head nod on my commissioner's screen, but I'm going to make the motion that we adopt the 23 draft total maximum daily loads for indicator bacteria, dissolved oxygen, and pH in Adams Bayou, Cow Bayou, and associated tributaries in the Sabine River Basin, as recommended by the Executive Director.
I second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Item number 6 is the consideration and approval of the TCEQ Chief Auditor's Office Fiscal Year 2021 Audit Plan, and the Chief Auditor is here to present the item.
Good morning, Mr. Hardison.
Good morning, Chairman Neerman, Commissioner Lindley, Commissioner Janeka, Public Interest Counsel, General Counsel. For the record, my name is Mike Hardison, and I'm the Chief Auditor of the TCEQ. I'm here today to request approval of our fiscal year 2021 audit plan. Chapter 2102 of the Texas Government Code requires that the Chief Auditor prepare a risk-based audit plan annually. It also requires that the audit plan be approved by the agency's governing board. In order to develop our audit plan, my office completed a risk assessment of agency processes, related information systems, fees, and expenditures. Our report that's before you describes our risk assessment processes and identifies proposed audit projects for the coming fiscal year. At this time, the Chief Auditor's Office requests your approval of our fiscal year 2021 audit plan, and I welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hardison. I have none. Commissioner Lindley, any questions?
I have none. Thanks, Mike.
And Commissioner Janeka?
No questions for me. Thank you so much for your work on this.
Thank you. And Mr. Hardison, you know, and colleagues, we've all been briefed on this plan, I believe. I certainly have, and think it's appropriate in terms of scoping out our next year's work, and am ready to adopt if one of you want to offer a motion.
I can make a motion. I would move that we approve the fiscal year 2021 annual audit plan as proposed by the Chief Auditor.
Seconded.
The motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Commissioner Janeka, how do you vote?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Item number 7 is consideration and approval of the agency's fiscal year 2021 operating budget. The Executive Director's staff is here to present the item.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, Public Interest Counsel. For the record, this is Elizabeth Cifuentes-Coke, Director of Budget and Planning Division. I'm here to present the Executive Director's recommended fiscal year 2021 operating budget. This information was compiled in accordance with the General Appropriations Act. We're requesting approval of the recommended budget. You were provided a presentation. Overall, the agency's budget for fiscal year 2021 is $378 million. This is a variance of $23 million from the 2020 fiscal year. It's mostly resulting from front-loaded riders. Front-loaded riders are associated with litigation for Rio Grande at $5 million, the emission reduction technology at $4 million, the environmental radiation and perpetual care account at $3 million. We also have a air quality planning rider at $4.5 million, and then we also have some variance associated with capital. Our FTEs are staying the same from 2020 at 2829 FTEs for the fiscal year. Overall, our fee funds are supporting 83% of our budget. And I'm looking at the method of finance chart. It's also showing a downward trend in general revenue from 6 to 4%, and that's associated with front-loaded riders. The next page is the fee FTE comparison summary. It shows the variant or the changes by office, and the changes are associated with changes in the executive offices for the deputy executive directors. The next page provides a breakdown by office, just to highlight some of the biggest changes in the Office of Air at $8.9 million. Those are, again, associated with front-loaded riders. The next page provides a budget category comparison. And the most significant changes are our professional and temporary, and then also in our remediation, reimbursement, and grant contracts. And again, as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, that's associated with the front-loaded riders. The following page breaks down the remediation, reimbursement, and grant contracts. That totals $128.3 million of our total budget. And then the following two pages provide details on our capital budget. Overall, capital budget is going down by roughly $2.8 million. And then the final page of the presentation is descriptions of our information technology projects. This concludes my presentation, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation and don't have any questions at this point. Commissioner Lindley?
No, I think I got all my questions answered earlier, so I'm good today. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Janeka?
Likewise, thank you so much. No questions. Great effort on making sure everything that I possibly could have asked about, you'd already made sure to get me all the information. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I'm in the same boat. You know, I think we've all been briefed on this and had an opportunity to answer our questions well in advance of hearing this matter this morning. But this is an opportunity, too, for the public to take a look at what we're doing, as well as the Office of Public Interest Counsel. So, Ms. Smith, I'll ask you if anyone has signed in to speak on this item.
We don't have anyone registered on this item.
Thank you. And I'll ask the Office of Public Interest Counsel if they have any thoughts that they'd like to share.
I don't have any questions. I support approval of the budget as presented by the Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. McWhirter. I've already stated that I agree with that, so I'm ready to entertain a motion.
I would move, I don't think I'm skipping line here, skipping ahead. Sorry if I am. I'd move that we approve the Commission's fiscal year 2021 operating budget as proposed by the Executive Director.
I second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those, we're taking a roll call vote. I fell into old patterns here. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka, how do you vote?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Item number 8 is the consideration of a resolution filed on July 28, 2020 by the Municipal Solid Waste Management and Resource Recovery Advisory Council. The ED should present the item, followed by OPIC, and then interested persons who have appeared to speak on the resolution. OGC recommends that they be limited to 5 minutes each. The Executive Director staff is here to present.
Ms. Smith, before we go ahead with the Executive Director, should we take the interested persons up before we hear from OPIC? I'm not sure I heard you on that.
We can take them up before OPIC if you'd like.
Yeah, I think we will do that.
Okay.
And sorry for the interruption. Executive Director staff, good morning. Please proceed when you're ready.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. On behalf of the Executive Director, I am Charlie Fritz with the Waste Permits Division. With me today is Ian Grutch of the Environmental Law Division and Elizabeth Cifuentes-Koch of the Budget and Planning Division. The item in front of you is a resolution from the agency's Municipal Solid Waste Management and Resource Recovery Advisory Council, or MSRAC. MSRAC's core functions include reviewing and evaluating policies on municipal solid waste management and making recommendations to the agency. This resolution asks the agency to include an additional request of $10 million in its upcoming legislative appropriations request. The additional funding would come from the Solid Waste Disposal Fees account, or Fund 5000, and be provided to the agency's Regional Solid Waste Grants Program. Due to budget uncertainties at both the state and agency level, Executive Director's staff respectfully recommends not acting on the resolution. Thank you, and we are available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Fritz. I have none. Commissioner Lindley, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Janeka?
None now, thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, I understand that we may have Mr. Stokes signed in to speak on this item.
That's correct.
Mr. Stokes,
Yes,
are you
sir.
on the line? Yeah, please go ahead when you're ready, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is John Austin Stokes, and I'm the Executive Director of the Concho Valley Council of Governments. I have the privilege to be appointed by the Hill County Judge Justin Lewis to serve as the Environmental Quality Chair for the Texas Association of Regional Councils. I'd first like to say thank you to Earl Lott, who's worked with regional councils over the years on municipal solid waste grant programs, and then also to say congratulations to Charlie Fritz for her recent promotion. We look forward to working with both of them as we move forward. I also want to personally thank the members of the Municipal Solid Waste Management and Resource Advisory Council for putting this resolution item number 8 in your packet and before you for your consideration. As you are probably aware, the council that put forth this motion includes a very diverse group of stakeholders from all over Texas. TARC, Texas Association of Regional Councils, is extremely grateful for their support of this program and for their support of appropriating additional dollars. In addition to my own COG board chair, Judge David Dillard from Concho County, this group is made up of a rep from a private conservation organization, a professional engineer from a private firm, a registered waste tire processor, a rep from a public solid waste district, an official from a city or county waste agency, a rep from the general public, a commercial operator, a recycling facility professional, a rep from the financial community, and elected officials from jurisdictions of various sizes. It goes without saying that it takes a group that diverse to ensure all interests are considered regarding the health and safety of Texans. And I would again like to thank them for coming together to make this recommendation. As regional councils, we see firsthand the impacts that recent global events have put on state and local government budgets. And it's for this reason that we understand Executive Director Baker's recommendation during this uncertain time. However, we do hope that as our fiscal picture begins to get clearer, that our partnership with this agency might allow us to continue to pursue additional funding for this program during the either 87th legislature or beyond. And as you all know, the money in Fund 5000 was collected for a specific purpose, but as you also know, without your agency's assistance, it will remain just out of the reach of the communities that regional councils work so hard to serve. So we look forward to working with you on this grant program next session and throughout the sunset process. And I just want to say thank you again for allowing me to speak on behalf of the critical importance of this program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stokes. I really appreciate your comments. Colleagues, any questions for Mr. Stokes before we move to OPIC?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes. No questions for me necessarily, other than to just say I really do appreciate your and all the other members of this group's efforts in helping provide your express that you're making. I'm very inclined to defer to Director Baker's judgment on the immediate budget needs facing the agency, but I think I'm very supportive in spirit of your ask, and I hope that, for me personally, I wouldn't be upset if this council from the advisory council were to make its way around the legislature during the discussions around the budget. It I think is indicative of the wide stakeholders involved in the process. I think it is a valuable piece of input. So just appreciate your time and thank you again for all the efforts on it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Janeka. Office of Public Interest Counsel.
OPIC agrees with the Executive Director. We recommend that no action be taken on this item at this time.
Thank you. And I agree ultimately with that position. I want to add my words of thanks to Mr. Stokes for his service and his words of thanks to all the members of the Municipal Solid Waste Management and Resource Recovery Advisory Council. That it is a diverse group, I fully appreciate that, and that you're able to broker a consensus position carries a lot of weight with me, and I believe with my colleagues as well. And I fully appreciate that the needs that are articulated are very real, and your recommendation has true merit. But again, given the competing priorities and what's going to be a very difficult budget cycle, I think it's best that we not take action on the resolution today. Commissioner Lindley, any additional thoughts?
I'm in agreement. I don't have much to add to it, but I agree with everything you said, Chairman.
Commissioner Janeka, anything else before we entertain a motion?
Nothing else. Thank you, Chairman. And I don't know that we would have a motion if we're not taking action.
Fair point. No action is necessary on this item. And so, Ms. Smith, I'll ask you to call item 9.
Item 9 is the annual review of financial assurance mechanisms and cost estimates for radioactive material license number R04100 held by Waste Control Specialists, LLC. The ED will present the item. If any interested persons appear to speak on the financial assurance, we would have recommended 3 minutes each. My understanding is that we have 2 people signed in who don't wish to address the commission, and their presence will be noted for the record. The executive director's staff is here to present.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. On behalf of the Executive Director, I am Vaishali Tendolkar with the Radioactive Materials Division. With me is Brad Bussard with the Radioactive Materials Division, Amy Robinson with the Environmental Law Division, and Mark Stobener with the Financial Administration Division. In compliance with the 30 Texas Administrative Code Section 336.736C, Waste Control Specialist financial assurance mechanisms and cost estimates are reviewed to assure that sufficient funds are available for completion of the low-level radioactive waste disposal site closure plan. Included in your backup materials is the radioactive materials license financial assurance for Waste Control Specialists for your review and approval. Thank you for your consideration, and we are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I have none. Commissioner Lindley, any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Janeka.
Thank you. Ms. Tendolkar, no questions for me.
And since we have no one signed in to speak, let's turn to OPIC.
OPIC agrees with the Executive Director that this review of financial assurance mechanisms and cost estimates is required by applicable statutes and rules, and we have no objection to the Executive Director's findings.
Thank you, Mr. McWhorter. And even though this is a somewhat routine matter, I'm going to ask Commissioner Janeka if you'll share your thoughts first, since you have a little bit more depth on these issues than I do.
Yeah, I'd love to give a little context on it, and it's been years since I've gotten to work directly with it. But in the backup, I think there is a mention of the last substantive change to financial assurance for this license, tied back to Amendment 26 in 2014, and I did participate from a staff perspective in helping process that amendment. So I can attest to some staff conversations about just the level of detail in the plans and proposals that go into these financial assurance mechanisms, the total dollar amounts and those estimates. We've thrown around among staff whether there was a need to itemize and account for porta potties. So facilities, temporary facilities for construction staff during the temporary time that they would need to hypothetically close it. So an interesting policy exercise, somewhat difficult to step through all the hypotheticals, but I think does a very, very good job in thoroughness. And what this year's iterative review really reflects is just an adjustment for inflation. And so there's no real other change or move, but that's the context as I can best explain it. And I have no objections to moving forward with it today, and would love to have any questions or discussion if you all had any interest in it.
Thank you. Let me gather up Commissioner Lindley's thoughts next, and then I'll share any straggling thoughts that I may have.
I don't have any questions. I'm good. I appreciate your input on these matters, as always.
Yeah, Commissioner Janeka, I think I'm in the same boat. I appreciate what the exercise here is about. I worked on these issues. I'm not sure that I worked on CS, but I worked on financial assurance issues when I was in private practice many years ago. And sorry, I'll just take a moment for a tangent, another detour here. But Mr. Stubner, who's representing the agency today, and I worked together eons ago on financial assurance mechanisms, and I just want to compliment his excellence and professionalism. He represented then what I know to be true for the agency today, which is an individual who is very customer service oriented, but he also wouldn't truck any nonsense. So appreciate Mr. Stubner from our work many years ago and the work that our financial assurance folks do on a day-to-day basis. So with that trek down memory lane out of the way, I have nothing further to add and would be happy to entertain a motion on this.
I will move that we approve Waste Control Specialist's financial assurance mechanisms and cost estimates as recommended by the Executive Director.
I second.
The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say, I've done it again. I so much want to be back together with y'all. We're going to take a roll call vote here. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, I'll ask you to please call the next items.
Items 10 through 36 are the enforcement docket. The Executive Director's staff is here to present these matters.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. For the record, my name is Brian Sinclair of the Enforcement Division, and with me today are Michael De La Cruz of the Enforcement Division and Charmaine Backens of the Litigation Division, representing the Executive Director. Pending before you are items 10 through 36. The total assessed administrative penalties are $420,073, with $57,935 deferred, $110,713 applied towards supplemental environmental projects, and $251,425 to general revenue. We respectfully request approval of these items and are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Sinclair. I do have one, and that is how this enforcement docket stacks up with respect to our review, our summary and review of compliance history. Maybe you could speak to that.
Well, we are going to run compliance history for rating year 2020 on September 1st. And so presuming that all of these or any orders that are approved today and signed by the commission on prior to August 31st and set to effective, they'll become effective when signed by the commission. They will count in the compliance history calculation for rating year 2020. Is that the question you were asking?
That's precisely the question, and you've answered it. Thank you for that. That is my only question at this point. Commissioner Lindley, any questions?
No questions at this point. Thank you.
Commissioner Janeka, any questions for Mr. Sinclair?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Smith, we'll hear next from interested persons. I understand that we do have a few people signed in to speak, including a representative from Senator Rodriguez's office. Are you on the line? And I'll ask you to...
Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Great.
The volume sounds a little soft, so maybe if you'll speak up just a little bit and identify yourself, and the floor is yours.
Sure, thank you. I do have a soft voice, so if I go too soft, don't be afraid to let me know.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Xochitl Rodriguez. Sure, my name is Xochitl Rodriguez, and I'm the Director of Community Affairs for State Senator Jose Rodriguez. I'm offering these remarks into the record on the Senator's behalf this morning. First, I want to start, of course, by thanking you all for your commitment to safeguarding public health and welfare, especially in our community. You all have a difficult task in the best of times, and certainly I'm sure it's become more challenging during this unprecedented time. I'm speaking today to express the Senator's concerns for the agency's inability to address the serious issues with the Plaza del Norte asphalt facility. here in El Paso at 15499 Ryan Wesley Street in El Paso. It's evident that there are a number of gaps in the permitting and enforcement process that have allowed these bad faith actors to exploit the system to the detriment of the health and safety of our constituents. Most recently, I would like to draw to your attention a permit amendment was approved before enforcement action for past violations was taken or the defects for those violations cured. Given the company's record of noncompliance with the prior permit requirements, it's been surprising and frustrating that the amendment was approved, effectively forgiving past violations, some of which the agreed order being reviewed today would penalize. The new permit was issued without notification to the residents who have been lodging complaints for years, without notification to our office, who, we've been in contact with TCEQ about this issue since 2018. TCEQ even sent senior staff to El Paso at the request of the senator for a public meeting on December 3rd in 2019. Despite the agency's efforts and the engagement of residents, the gaps in the system have continued to allow the company to run rampant over the residential neighbors. The constant smell of asphalt, air conditioner facilities, or air conditioner filters and pool drains are regularly filled with black tar-like substances. There's heavy and unsafe truck traffic present in the residential neighborhood regularly. There's noise, dust emissions, and other nuisances emitting from the facility constantly. And respiratory issues have been reported, along with other health complications. To address the testimonies from residents provided to DCQ, either anecdotally or via calls and emails, or even through their formal reporting process for odor and environmental nuisances, TCEQ has provided PDN with 6 written notices of violations between April and October of 2019, which included, but we're not limited to, failure to comply with 5-day-per-week operating schedule presented in the original permit application, failure to control dust emissions from moving the property, and failure to submit a performance report within 45 days after a stack test was completed. The stack testing results have yet to be provided to TCEQ. We do want to highlight that. There's a clear lag between the initiation of investigations and the final TCEQ orders, and during this gap, PDN has applied for and was approved for this recent permit amendment, which now allows them to operate 24/7. Essentially, they now are able to continue operations at an even greater pace than before, with any penalties being minor and not affecting the new permit. Unfortunately, none of this is new. So the community has raised serious concerns about the air quality in the residential neighborhood, health and safety, and nuisance issues for the last 10 years. The facility has operated under several names during that time, but the same ownership, and reports of air quality and other issues have persisted regardless. Unfortunately, in every instance of formal enforcement, the TCEQ has deferred some portion of the penalties owed by PDN. In the case of the stack test results, as I mentioned, they were provided multiple informal extensions without formally requesting them, while the residents in the area continue to experience environmental disturbances. The most common complaint from residents is an overwhelming amount of dust created by the operations at the facility and the scent of asphalt. The environmental nuisance the facility creates in the neighborhood comes with other glaring violations, to include the most basic, failure to provide notification prior to the commencement of operations. As early as last week, the Senator's office received reports from residents that an above-ground natural gas storage tank was delivered to PDN. TCEQ almost immediately confirmed the report and explained that they did not believe PDN was permitted for the equipment and could not be investigated or cited until the equipment was in use. The facility has operated in this way since it opened, building and expanding their operation without prior permitting, only to work around the system to apply for and receive a permit after the fact. The most recent agreed order, which is the subject of this hearing, is the first substantial enforcement action to result from PDN's noncompliance. Unfortunately, as we all know, the amended permit that was approved earlier this year now makes the facility's defects allowable, to the detriment of the health and well-being of the residents in the area. It's our understanding that notices of violation, effective orders, and other enforcement actions negatively affect future compliance history rating for a facility. By law, TCEQ must consider the current classification and updated compliant history report of a customer in many of their regulatory decisions. PDN has a history of violating permitted hours of operation, The 2 silos approved for use in the amended permit were a violation of the previous permit because PDN constructed them, again, without prior authorization. The amended permit functions to affirm that PDN is above the law and that their history of noncompliance can simply disappear because they've learned to work a delayed system that fails to deliver timely or effective enforcement. As you can see, TCEQ has been unable to protect the health and safety of residents who are subject to the operations of this company that has used the existing system to its advantage. While we acknowledge the difficult position the agency is in and appreciate the consistent communication they have maintained with the Senator's office, the Senator urges you to work with his staff and the residents living in Homestead Meadows neighborhood to find a way to hold this polluter accountable and ensure public safety. The Senator's office will respectfully submit a letter to the Commission following my comments as well as some supplementary material. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Ms. Rodriguez, thank you very much for offering those comments, and please thank the Senator for us as well. What you read was not news to me. We've had the benefit of the comments that were filed in this matter from several of the neighbors. I think some of them might speak here in a moment, and I appreciate their comments as well. And this is a very concerning matter for me. And I would like to work with the Senator's office personally to the extent that I can without getting sideways on our ex parte communications ethical prohibitions, since what we're contemplating here are contested matters. To the extent that I can't personally participate, I would encourage my advisor and certainly our staff to continue to do that. I'll offer just a few more thoughts, and then we will actually, let me reserve the rest of my thoughts for later after we've heard some of the additional presentations. So I'll pause there, but Ms. Rodriguez, thank you very much. Commissioner Lindley, do you have any questions or comments for Ms. Rodriguez?
No questions, just I would comment and say that I appreciate you calling in and voicing the Senator's concerns. And also I would just personally love to thank the Senator for his service. I always found Senator Rodriguez to be a very kind man and very practical, and I really enjoyed my interactions with him. We didn't have a lot, but we did have some, and I will actually miss seeing him around the Senate. So anyway, that was different than item 16, but I'm glad you commented today. I do think we need to talk about it a little more extensively, but we can do that in a few minutes. So thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginecka?
I just want to thank Ms. Rodriguez for the reading the Senator's comments and echo each of your comments. I really appreciate and look forward to, through my office and the agency, working on this matter as directly as possible, but seeing it come to resolution. I think our agency deals with all manner of entity and individual out in the state, and we have entities we're dealing with who are more and less enthusiastic about adopting our requirements and standards and racing into compliance. I really do sincerely appreciate the Senator's efforts and your efforts to help work with your community and help us as an agency identify any actors and any entities that fall in the slower to act. TCEQ really does rely on citizens' participation. And that's both in the reporting for us to make sure that our investigation process is informed by citizens' rights, but also it really does help bring to our attention. We have a very limited bandwidth in terms of being able to focus our radar on matters before the agency. So I appreciate your efforts, and please assure the Senator his words have helped bring more of these matters to attention, and I appreciate all your service. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ginecka. And I'll just pile on to Commissioner Lindley's comments. I've had very limited interactions with Senator Rodriguez, but I very much enjoyed and appreciated them. And I'll throw in a gratuitous comment that he appears to hire well too. I really appreciated your presentation, Ms. Rodriguez. So with that, let's move on. Thank you for calling in today. Let's move on, Ms. Smith. Who else has signed in to speak here?
On item 16, we also have Mr. Stephen Dick.
Mr. Dick, are you on the line?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning. You're coming through loud and clear. I'll ask you to just please state your name again and go ahead.
All right. My name is Stephen Dick. I live at 15460 Ryan Wesley, and I encourage you, if you are able to pull that up on Google Maps, you will see that my home, my residence, is approximately 12 to 1,500 feet from the asphalt plant operated by Paso del Norte. My wife suffers greatly from the emissions from Paso del Norte's asphalt plant and rock quarry. My family, I moved them here to El Paso 22 years ago because of my wife's asthma issues. The doctor recommended that we move to a dry climate. We had friends here in El Paso. We visited and found that she had a substantial decrease in her asthma activity while visiting, and subsequently moved here 22 years ago. For now 21 years, she has not needed asthma medication of any kind until, I said 21 years, but until Paso del Norte fired up their asphalt plant at the end of our street. She now suffers from asthma on a regular basis. Paso del Norte has instituted a chemical to cover up their asphalt smell. And just as recently as last night, I had to call the after hours hotline because the odor was so strong it made my wife sick, and she had to go to bed with an air purifier. Other residents in the neighborhood use masks, sleep with masks on. We're in a pandemic and many people are using masks and N95. We have people in our community, in our neighborhood, that have been using N95 masks for 3 years on our home property. And so it is, as Ms. Rodriguez, she recapped things very well, and Senator Rodriguez's office has been most helpful to us. There is a blatant disregard by Paso del Norte for regulations, for following procedures in their local office. Maybe it is in general, has enabled them to continue operating amidst blatant violations of emissions, time frames not met, permits not had, and they're given a blank slate to do whatever they want. The speed limit keeps getting raised every time they get slapped with a speeding ticket, if you will. When they were not operating within the daytime only, they got a permit to operate 24 hours a day. When they didn't operate in the 5 days only, they got a permit to operate 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So something must be done. I see my clock is expiring.
Mr. Dick, appreciate your comments. Thank you for your written comments as well on this matter. I'm sorry to hear the difficulties that you and your wife are suffering. I don't have any questions for you, sir. Commissioner Lindley, do you have any questions for Mr. Dick or comments?
No questions. Thank you for calling in today.
Commissioner Janeka.
No questions at this time. Appreciate your efforts, and I see I recognize your name from when this other violations came before us at an earlier time within the last year. So I appreciate your continued efforts to help identify and bring it to our office and to our agency to bring our attention to these sorts of matters.
Thank you, Commissioner Janeka, and thank you, Mr. Dick, for your comments today. Ms. Smith, who else do we have signed in to speak?
We have Ms. Bonnie Hopper.
Good morning, Ms. Hopper.
Good morning, Commissioner. Like she said, my name is Bonnie Hopper. I am one of the residents in the neighborhood. My husband and I have been here since 1990. There's others that have been here since the 80s. What I would like to say is the order from last year that we sent comments on, it's still the same as this year. A lot of it, the odor, as even Monday night, I'm one that uses the N95 mask and have used going on 3 years. I had it on in my living room at 8:30 in the evening because I was coughing so bad. I went to bed at 11 o'clock. I woke up choking and coughing, and it is due to the asphalt coming in. One time I called the fire department. They came. Of course, the fire department could not smell any odor outside. It had dissipated. But inside, one of the firemen came in. He smelled it in our front room. This is what we have been living with going on 3 years. And others, there's another lady down in our neighborhood that wears a respirator mask. It is a danger. There was a fire recently with their recycling asphalt. It was an explosion fire, and it's close to our homes. There's pipelines up the road, over the mountain. The people on the other side of the mountain get the blasting just as we do. This company has been negligent in every area of their permit. They have misrepresented things on their permit, saying they would do a stack test at startup. They still do not have a valid stack test, and it says in this allegation, discrepancies between raw data and reported data. What does that mean? They have misrepresented things so much at this company, and from the very beginning, 2004, we fought this. It was gone because of the same situations. My neighbor next door had passed away, and they said it was a contributing factor to her death. We have dealt with this, and we need this plant gone. It's too close to our neighborhood. It was gone twice before, and it needs to be gone, and their permit needs to be revoked due to all the problems that they have had and not following and complying with their permit. We've been told it wasn't time to go to the Attorney General's office yet, but we don't know when that time is. All the enforcements and all these violations have added up, and it seems that it's just adding up more now than it did earlier on, which it could have earlier on if TCEQ would have done their investigations like we were complaining about. So that's all I have to say, and I thank you for doing your job in this pandemic. And at your opening, you said personal life safety are most important. Yes, sir, they really are. And appreciate you and all of you that are doing your job during this pandemic and all that's going on. And I appreciate the time that I can tell you how things are here and in our neighborhood. And there's a lady that lives right across the street from this asphalt plant. She has 2 little girls, and one was in the hospital and with respiratory problems. It's a horrible situation, and I thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, Ms. Hopper. I appreciate your calling in and sharing your story with us in person this morning, as well as your written comments. I don't have any questions for you at this point or any additional comments, but Commissioner Lindley, do you have anything for Ms. Hopper?
No, I appreciate your phone call this morning. Thank you.
Commissioner Janeka.
No questions, but thank you so much, Ms. Hopper, for taking the time to call in, and I appreciate your participation in helping us move the process along to get to hopefully what will be an ideal, acceptable solution for everyone.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Janeka, and thank you again, Ms. Hopper. Ms. Smith, is there anyone else signed in to speak on this item?
We don't have anyone else on number 16. We did have a person sign in on 36, but they're just signed in and available for questions.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. Let's turn now to OPIC.
Good morning again. I would like to make just a few comments about item 16. I have had personal conversations with some of the people affected by this facility, and they've expressed very heartfelt concerns and frustrations about how they've been affected by this facility. I think the agency has done a good job to the extent possible to make sure that affected people knew how to contact the agency and make complaints. I think all of us have had, some frustration through the years about, the nature of these types of complaints, odor violations, things of that nature that, they can be rather transient and hard to document consistently every time that they occur. But I have every confidence that agency staff is building the record of how these things are happening and taking, actions appropriate within the confines of our penalty policies. I would just, encourage everyone involved in the situation to continue monitoring compliance and making sure that this facility has the attention of the agency and has a realization of all the resources available to this agency to aggressively achieve compliance and take all measures necessary. And also through the permitting as well as the enforcement mechanisms, ultimately there are mechanisms by which, the agency may reconsider whether this facility should actually be permitted if it continues on the path it's been on. And that's really all of my comments regarding this particular item. If you'd like my opinion right now on all of these matters presented, I do recommend that the Commission go ahead and approve all of the orders, including the order for item 16. And I'm available for any questions if you have any for me.
Thank you, Mr. McWhirter. I have none at this point. Commissioner Lindley, any comments or questions for Mr. McWhirter?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Janeka.
Thank you, Mr. McWhirter. That was helpful.
And let me just turn back and just offer an open-ended opportunity to the Executive Director, staff, Mr. Sinclair, perhaps you, to respond to any of what you heard in connection with item number 16.
Thank you, Chairman. The agency continues to be responsive to the complaints that we get about Paso del Norte. We continue to conduct investigations out there, and as OPIC mentioned, we continue to build the documentation, to build the case. That we do consider, whether or not to do a 1660 order with a deferral. We try to be consistent with what we do in other cases with like violations, in consideration of whether or not to refer a case to the Attorney General. We have statutes and guidance on that that we follow, and so we will continue to do that as we have additional violations identified. Some of the concerns expressed by the commenters will be addressed in some future enforcement actions that are in process right now. And I don't know, we also have David Ramirez with us. I don't know, David, if you want to comment further on that.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. For the record, I'm David Ramirez, the Area Director for the TCQ's Office of Compliance Enforcement, Border and Permian Basin Area. And just to pretty much echo what Brian said, we're still doing vigilant investigations. We've actually implemented a process with a local program who also has jurisdiction within the county to do activities on behalf of the agency, to where we are conducting random investigations on a week, once a week, at a minimum, once a week. And based on information that we receive from the complainants as to when is the most appropriate time to go, we realize that there are some limitations, and that at times, from when we're by the time we get to the facility, as it was mentioned, some of the emissions could participate, and we may not be able to continue to track those. But we take every complaint seriously. We have had a couple of situations and investigations that were brought to our attention that it was there, or the complainants would not have notified us. We would not have been aware of the activities occurring. So we do appreciate that they still continue to communicate with us. And it's our effort that we continue to communicate with not only with the complainants in the area, but with the elected officials in the area so that they know where we are as we move forward through the enforcement process. We've had a good relationship, and our office there has been very responsible and responsive to when we receive complaints to address them in a timely manner. So it's just really trying to document when these circumstances present themselves. Don't know if y'all have any questions for me at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez and Mr. Sinclair. I don't have any additional questions at this point. Commissioner Lindley?
No questions. Thanks.
Commissioner Janeka?
I appreciate that, Mr. Ramirez. The updates on the efforts you and other enforcement entities in other branches of government are taking are great to hear about. I'm very glad to hear. I'm encouraged, and I hope that that is able to continue. If there are any unique challenges that your region staff are facing with this particular type of entity or providing this level of oversight for this particular type of response investigation, I would love to discuss in the future moving forward how best to consider and support the ongoing conversation and dialogue about how the agency's procedures can best be tailored to suit these circumstances. So I sincerely appreciate your efforts, and thank you so much for your input today.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Janeka. Just a few initial observations on item 16. And let me just say, as for the docket as a whole, I'm ready to move forward on it with an asterisk on item 16. And I want to begin by just making it abundantly clear that there are certain things that are within this agency's authority and some that are outside our authority. We have no say in truck traffic or speed limits or noise or lights, for example, but we do very much have a say and do have jurisdiction on air emissions and nuisance odors. And a big part, sounds like the main part of the complaints that we're hearing are squarely in our jurisdiction. Nuisance odors are really tricky and difficult to document. And I think everybody is growing to appreciate that. We have similar problems occasionally with municipal solid waste landfills because they are sometimes so fleeting, but they can inflict real hardship on neighbors. Procedurally, how to proceed on item 16, whether we're to approve or do something else with this agreed order that's before us. I'm a little bit uncertain on how to move forward on that, and I think what I might want to do, colleagues, I'll give you an opportunity to share any additional thoughts, but I might want to take a short recess to gather my thoughts on that. But before we do, let me give you an opportunity to share any thoughts or comments you have about the docket as a whole, but especially item 16.
I can start. I don't have too much to say. I tend to agree with you. The only comment I'll make, and this is in agreement with you, but just to note it, something that stuck out to me on this one, obviously, was the number of comments we received. You know, I don't think it's normal that we get that many comments on an enforcement matter, and so obviously that raised a flag. And so when I opened up, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it was I don't remember which document it was now. I don't want to say it wrong, but one of the ones that our Office of Compliance Enforcement put together, I remember reading, and Mr. Sinclair or Charmaine, if I say any of this wrong, you absolutely need to correct me, but I thought I remember reading something on there that even when our investigator went out, they experienced the nuisance and maybe even some nausea. And so going on with what you were, just to pile on what you were saying, Chairman, nuisance it can be very difficult to document. And the fact that we were able to document it, just kind of, it just heightened what we're talking about here for me. And so I agree that on every item on this document, I'm ready to move forward with the exception of 16 and asterisk there. And I don't have a solution right now yet either on the best way to go about handling it. I was hoping we'd have some discussion today, so I'm glad we are. But I'll stop there. I just kind of wanted to say that I agree and that it really stood out to me that our investigator, at least on one occasion, was able and experienced side effects from the nuisance odor. So, I noted that.
Thank you, Commissioner Lindley. Commissioner Janeka?
I really appreciate hearing from each of you on this. And if you might indulge me, Chairman, I'm not sure if Mr. Sinclair or Mr. Ramirez are still available on the microphone. I would love to perhaps ask a couple questions just to make sure I understand it, to understand the distinction. And it's only Commissioner Lindley raised exactly one of the points that jumped out at me. With nuisance odors, at least in particular, it does seem that the ability of our agency to observe or document health effects seems to how severe we can assess the violation to be. And I'm very sensitive to that, understanding that at the end of the day, we need to be able to take that allegation, have it be very well documented and supported, and be able to stand up in front of the legal system through the whole process. Whether it's an affidavit, needs to be a witness down there. I think our rules reflect and our processes or procedures may affect it. So I'd like to know from Mr. Sinclair or Mr. Ramirez, if that's if you can speak to it. In this instance, can you provide a little more information about the factors that were considered in assessing the nuisance odor violation to be a moderate as opposed to a major?
Yes, this is Brian Sinclair again. We struggle with this too. We look at documentation in the investigation report that says an investigator experienced nausea or experienced coughing or watery eyes or different things. And I guess the distinction we've made through the years, and we've struggled with this for this kind of violation for years, is that sometimes there's two investigators, one has some symptoms and the other doesn't. It can vary, the sensitivity can vary from person to person. We also don't really have, in the penalty policy, for major harm, it talks about, being exposed to pollutants which exceed levels that are protective. Well, what pollutants is it? It's an asphalt smell, but we don't really quantify that, in a way. And usually, unless there's some sort of medical documentation from a physician or medical professional that documents the impact from being exposed to the odor, or then that's the kind of documentation we've wanted to have to be able to call it an actual major. So we go with actual moderate because it is strong enough for, it's a significant amount, but usually the symptoms that are experienced as soon as the individual is out of the odor, then the symptoms cease.
Thank you. I appreciate that. What is the nature of the medical documentation that's needed in terms of the time factor? Is that typically something that has to have been collected contemporaneously? And I would expect we would rarely see it, because why would a member of the public know to go through that process? How are we working in this instance, or more broadly with the agency, to try to make sure the public understands that, so that if that is a requisite step for us to move forward to getting a more rigorous level of I want to borrow from a phrase from Mr. McWhirter there, to aggressively achieve compliance. Where are our assets in the agency best suited to try to help convey and educate the public on that need, and how best to get there if there are unique circumstances or requirements?
I've been asked this question in conversations with Mr. Dick and Ms. Hopper, and said that we would really need medical documentation that it's more than just them saying. And I'm not saying that they're not, being truthful and accurate in what it is, but it's anecdotal, and it doesn't seem to be enough to move forward with actual major in trying to defend it. Maybe if it goes to hearing, or something like that. So that's I guess the way that we would communicate it is agency staff, when concerns are expressed by individuals, can share that information.
Okay, I appreciate that, Mr. Sinclair. Thank you. And I guess one final question I had, specifically just as to one of the ordering provisions in terms of repeating the stack testing. And the reason I ask, I think it touches on some concerns that some of our public commenters today spoke to in terms of how quickly or whether they have come back into compliance with a previous order in response to notice of violation, and then how quickly they are moving to get into compliance. I was a little struck by the language in the ordering provision that seems to imply that stack testing won't even be started, and the process won't even get the ball's not going to get rolling until this order has been finalized and a clock started before that 15-day deadline. And I regret that the respondent, or the entity in question here, isn't available for providing testimony or answering questions today. I think they may be better trying to resume that. Why hasn't that been reinitiated and started, or is this truly I guess I want to clarify, is that ordering provision merely a formality that it may have well already been started and maybe concluded by now, or does in fact the order need to be finalized before the entity would begin with submitting notification and initiating that process to get the stack testing reattempted?
I appreciate that question, Commissioner. Nothing prevents the Paso del Norte from initiating the stack test. They don't have to wait. It's just like any other order. Nobody needs to wait until their order is effective to come back into compliance. What this does is, since this is one of the violations alleged in the order, it sets a time-bound requirement that they initiate it and that they come back into compliance within the time frame specified in the order. And so, but nothing prevents them from doing that sooner.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. I hope in this case that they're already fully in compliance and taking all the actions. I would be surprised and disappointed if I heard of any entities that were waiting for a purely administrative stamp on something that, frankly, they've agreed to nominally, and they're not. They don't. I know there's a nuance in the ordering provision about contesting or the admissibility of those allegations, but ultimately, it troubles me if entities aren't moving as quickly as possible to get into a state of compliance. But I think that what I'm most interested in on these orders is looking at the order provisions, making sure that they do look very discreetly enforceable. I look back on the one from the previous effort. So we have statements from the public that they're continuing to create nuisance dust conditions. The ordering provision that they are expected to comply with is that they will implement measures and or procedures designed to maximize control of dust emissions from all entry and exit roads, main traffic routes, in-plant roads, and stockpiles. Well, those procedures are designed to maximize control of dust emissions. I question how much your staff can rely on that sort of language to rigidly enforce whether nuisance dust is persisting. On the one hand, well, they've done it. They did what we asked them and expected them to do. So I would love to have discussions with your office on specific language about ordering language if there are concerns or questions. But I have some reservations. So I would love to. I'll stop. I think we're going to take a break and ponder. So I'm getting ahead of myself, Mr. Chairman. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Janeka. I share your concerns. And let me just pause to confirm our assumption. Is there anyone on the line to represent Paso del Norte Materials? Is there anyone here for the regulated entity? No one had signed in, and I just wanted to confirm. This is their agreed order that's ahead of us, and of course it's appropriate for them to be on the line and comment on it. Next up, Commissioner Janeka, I agree wholeheartedly. I would want and expect them to be coming into compliance with the stack test requirement as soon as possible, order or no order with the TCEQ. I think I'm at a point where I'm ready to take a few minutes to collect my thoughts. We ready to take a break? Okay, I've got 11:16 a.m. Why don't we try to do this in about 5 minutes and reconvene at 11:21. So with that, we are in recess.
Muted.
All right, colleagues, we're back after a short recess. Time is 11:22. We're discussing our enforcement docket and specifically item 16 concerning the negotiated draft agreed order with Paseo del Norte Materials. And let me just share some disorganized thoughts. Number one, it's clear to me that Paseo del Norte Materials is having a profound impact on its neighbors, including in ways that are within our jurisdiction, and including clearly violations of legal requirements that are within our jurisdiction. And I'm bothered that this is continued in some form or fashion for 3 years. And I want Paseo del Norte Materials to understand that they need to get right with the legal requirements and get right by their neighbors in order to continue their operations there. And my suggestion at this point is, I came into the conversation this morning that the best path to relief for the neighbors is to approve this agreed order that would start the clock ticking on ordering provisions, but I'm concerned about the level of commitment from Paseo del Norte Materials. They're not here to express their level of commitment to coming correct. So where I've come down is my recommendation for your consideration is that we remand this item to the executive director with instructions to refer it to the Attorney General's office for enforcement, simply because it's a little bit more consequential to receive an order from a district court than it is from this agency. So I'll throw that out for your consideration.
Oh,
go ahead.
No.
Yeah.
I think I'm right there mentally in the same place, and I guess that was my one question was, in the spirit of most aggressively pursuing compliance, what's the quickest path to helping encourage and get this entity into compliance, and is a 30-day deadline from us adopting an order in which they must have taken steps to implement measures and or procedures designed to prevent odors from causing nuisance odor conditions, because this ordering provision would be effective if we were to adopt it. And I was sensitive to having an adopted order at this point in our calendar year with regards to their compliance history. So I was open to moving forward with the docket today with some from the dais direction to the ED to watch closely after that 30-day period comes. But if in your opinion, the quickest way, and it's helpful to know that the direct referral through that manner going through the district court does carry some weight, and I appreciate your expertise on that one. I think there's some attractive aspects to that path as well. Appreciate that, Commissioner Lindley. I'll stop here.
I'm fine with that suggestion, Chairman, and Mr. Chineke. Some of the notes I've been jotting down, questions I've thought of, or just comments I might want to make once we're getting close to wrapping this up, is not far off from that. One thing I've written down was, if we move forward today with this order, how we kind of chosen to go that route, and I think sounding like we're all in agreement that we are not going to go that route. I would want to instruct the executive director's staff that, not sure the best way to go about it, but to flag this one as something that needs to be considered seriously about sending to the AG's office if it were to come back in front of us. So the fact that you're proposing that we go ahead and just go that route, I'm comfortable with. And I will just say, I think it is, I'll say it, I'll re-say what you said, Chairman. I think it is bad judgment. I think it is extremely disappointing that the company didn't show up today. It doesn't show good faith. And for all those entities out there that are still tuning in and listening, I think it's worth noting how we feel about items like this when there are substantial public comments when there are nuisance issues that have been experienced by our own investigators. And while it is an agreed order, you still need to be tuned in and paying attention. So I'll stop there. And I think I'll be willing to support whatever motion you make as far as referring this to the AG's office. And then I will say, just to kind of put a bow on it, again, I'm fine with everything else on the enforcement docket in front of us today, moving forward with how it's proposed.
Thank you, Commissioner Lindley. And I'll just offer just a couple more observations, and then I'll go ahead and make the motion. One is that, certainly we want our investigators to very much stay on top of this in the spirit of, aggressively pursuing compliance. And one of the benefits of referring this to the Attorney General's office is the extent that there are other violations out there that have not been made part of this order that can be folded into the Attorney General's and again, to Paseo del Norte Materials, my recommendation is to come into compliance, do those fact tests, make this right with all due haste, even absent an order from us, my request. With that, colleagues, I move that we adopt items 10 through 15 and 17 through 36 as recommended today by the Executive Director, and I further move that we remand item 16 to the Executive Director with instructions to refer it to the Office of the Attorney General for enforcement.
I second.
The motion has been made and seconded in chorus. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Daneka?
I vote aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next item.
Item number 37 is the consideration of the monthly enforcement report. The Executive Director's staff is here to present the matter.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. My name is Brian Sinclair of the Enforcement Division, and with me is Charmaine Backens of the Litigation Division and Marilyn Gates of the Program Support and Environmental Assistance Division. We are here to present the monthly enforcement report for fiscal year 2020 through June. There were 1,289 effective administrative orders issued, and of those, 149 contained supplemental environmental projects. These orders assessed a total of $12,835,053 in penalties, with a payable amount of $7,651,768. $3,068,987 are to be paid towards supplemental environmental projects. 13,160 notices of violation have been issued through either our field offices or a review of self-reported data in our central office, and 1,469 enforcement action referrals have been received. There are 1,490 pending administrative orders, with 161 cases that are on the backlog. 207 cases are pending at the Office of the Attorney General for representation in district court, and 14 judgments have been issued. 2,117 cases are being tracked for compliance. We have included for review a summary of OCE investigative activities for fiscal years 2018, 2019, and 2020. We are available to answer questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Sinclair. I don't have any specific questions, but I do want to ask you sort of an open-ended one. If there's anything that you or your office needs or would simply like us to know with respect to maintaining our enforcement activities during the pandemic.
I think we've maintained our enforcement activities. If you look at the pace of enforcement action referrals, it has dropped off somewhat. I think that's noticeable since March, that we were ahead of pace compared to the previous 2 years, and we're a little bit, we're basically on the same pace that we've been the past couple of years. So I think that we've seen somewhat of a decrease in the number of notices of violation and the number of years. But otherwise, I think that we continue to move orders ahead. We've been fairly successful at getting settlement, and things are as normal as I guess they could be, given the situation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't have any other questions at this point. Commissioner Lindley, any questions?
No, thank you, Brian.
Commissioner Janeka?
None for me. Thank you so much, Mr. Sinclair.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, has anybody signed in to speak on this item?
No one is registered on this item.
All right, so we'll hear next from the Office of Public Interest Counsel.
I appreciate the report. I don't have any questions.
Thank you. And colleagues, I'm just going to want to just share, and really just for the record, my observations of this report. And I think the most important pages, or the most the most accessible pages at least, are the graphs presented on page 2, and then the final page, which are graphs showing our compliance with Legislative Budget Board compliance metrics. And what I'm seeing on the second page is that we are roughly on pace with prior years with respect to the number of notices of violation issued and the number of enforcement action referrals. It appears that that the pace has decelerated a little bit since the onset of the pandemic, but since we were perhaps a little bit ahead of the game in 2020, that hasn't put us very far behind, if at all, this fiscal year. Very different. The number of effective orders issued, the dollar amount of penalties assessed, the supplemental environmental projects that have been initiated. Even with the pandemic, we are clearly outpacing our performance, both in 2018 and 2019. So unclear. It doesn't look to me like there's any effects from the pandemic on that. So we're performing well there. I'll note that our backlogs have crept up with the onset of the backlogged orders, have crept up somewhat with the onset of the pandemic, but are still, within the normal range of fluctuation that we've observed over the last couple of fiscal years. And looking at the LBB performance metrics, we are, since this report is through June, we are, I think I'm counting correctly, 10 months in to the fiscal year. And so we have 2 months to go, and we've already met the performance metrics for emission event investigations. We've already exceeded the metric by 14% for spill cleanup investigations. The investigations of air sites, water sites, and waste sites, we have not yet met and may not actually meet the LBB performance measures. And I think we're just going to have to wait and see the next couple of months what comes in and see how we perform with respect to those. But it's hard to tell that the pandemic is having much of an effect at all on our enforcement activities as we measure them. And if we do, it appears that at this point, based on the data that we have, that they're going to be modest. But I think we need to continue to monitor this, and we'll have a better feel for the numbers once we close out July and August and can close out the fiscal year. But I just wanted to thank you for humoring me and allowing me to share those observations with you. Let me give you the opportunity to add anything if you'd like, and if not, we can move on to the next item. Commissioner Lindley?
I don't have anything to add. I appreciate it. I don't find it humorous, but I find it worthy of hearing about from you, and I'm glad you brought it up. That's a great stats to point out.
Thank you. Commissioner Janeka?
I really appreciate those observations as well, Mr. Chairman, and I'll just make one more of my own, and that's a reminder to all of us. It goes without saying, but many of these performance measures and LBB metrics, or our own internal metrics that we're reporting in these enforcement reports, I think good friendly reminder that we should always be mindful of what the metrics are, what they're actually measuring, what the policy implication of them are. Some of these are outside of our agency's control. Spill cleanup investigations naturally only can occur if there are spills, and there's always going to be, and certainly our agency has more than enough sites to continue and pursue investigations, but so much of our process can be affected by external factors. And so I take these performance measures, as always, with a grain of salt in terms of measuring what they all mean and what they tell us. And to some degree, total number of assessed penalties or number of effective orders, some factors are just outside of our control, but they always are a useful measure to show how well our agency is trying to help manage workload. And I really appreciate your observations, Mr. Chairman. I agree with them. And I'm very encouraged by everything that we see in this report, and just appreciate all staff's continued efforts, and just want to recognize the complexity of the policy space we work in. So many of the metrics y'all are being chased, and staff are being reminded, especially at this time of year as we near the end of the fiscal year, which happy early fiscal new year for everyone, is that LBB metrics are, at the end of the day, projections, and if staff come below or above, I think we always have a good reason for it, but I don't ever want to forget that LBB measures and metrics by which we live and die are, at the end of the day, just attempts to peg what things we want to measure. They're not targets, they're not limits, they're not floors. Oftentimes they kind of function like them in practice, but I'm always happy to engage with staff and really enjoy and appreciate this look into our agency's work.
Thank you, Commissioner Janeka. I appreciate that. And again, no action is necessary on this item. So Ms. Smith, I'll ask you to call the next item.
Item 38 is the consideration for adoption of amendments to 30 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 290, implementing House Bill 3552. The Executive Director's staff is here to present this item.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners, General Counsel, and Public Interest Counsel. On behalf of the Executive Director, I am Patrick Kading with the Water Supply Division. With me is Ruth Takita with the Environmental Law Division. This adopted rulemaking implements House Bill 3552 from the 86th Texas Legislature to 2019 regular session to require public water systems to notify their customers prior to permanently terminating the addition of fluoride to drinking water. The proposed rules were published in the May 15, 2020 issue of the Texas Register. The public comment period closed on June 16, 2020. The rule team did not receive comments during the public comment period. In conclusion, staff respectfully recommends adoption of this rulemaking to 30 TAC Chapter 290. Additionally, staff requests authorization to make non-substantive revisions necessary to comply with Texas Register requirements. Thank you, and we are available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hayden. I have none. Commissioner Lindley, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Janeka?
One simple question that I'm almost reluctant to ask, Mr. Kading. I just want to make sure, can you please confirm my understanding of the timing of how this rule would work in practice? Let's say a public water system wants to terminate providing or adding fluoride treatment to the water when they've been doing so. Our agency will now require them 60 days before they terminate that treatment to notify us at the same time that they notify all their customers. And then there's another notification requirement where they need to come back and demonstrate to us how they have notified their customer, or confirm that they have done so within a certain amount of time following that initial notification?
That's correct. The public water systems are required to notify the agency and their customers 60 days prior to termination of the addition of fluoride. And then within 10 days of that notice to their customers, they are required to submit documentation of the notice that they gave to their customers, and then how they, what delivery methods they use to reach their customers. And that's consistent with other public notice requirements for drinking water.
Perfect. Thank you so much for confirming that. I appreciate the elegance of crafting the language of the rule to make sure you're not adding excessive language in there. Just wanted to confirm my understanding of how it would operate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayden. Ms. Smith, is there anybody signed in to speak on this item?
No, we don't have anyone registered for this one.
And Public Interest Counsel.
OPIC recommends adoption of the amendments to the Commission's Chapter 290 rules to implement House Bill 3552 as presented by the Executive Director.
Thank you, colleagues. This is a really straightforward implementation of legislation. I think we should adopt it, and I'm happy to entertain any additional comments or a motion. And Commissioner Lindley, I'll begin with you.
I'm ready to make a motion, if that sounds good.
Please do.
I would move that we adopt the amendments to 30 Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 290, as recommended by the Executive Director.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Lindley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Janeka, how do you vote?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion carries. Ms. Smith, please call the next items.
The next items are for executive session, items 39 through 42, and the Commission will meet in executive session in a web-based video conference at approximately 11:48, as permitted by the Open Meetings Act, including Texas Government Code sections 551.071 and 551.074 of the Governor's March 16, 2020 executive order relating to the Open Meetings Act to take up and consider matters pursuant to items 39 through 42 as posted and noticed.
Thank you, Ms. Smith, and I'm going to amend that ever so slightly and allow us 10 minutes. It's 11:43, so we'll reconvene at 11:53 in the alternative forum that you've described. I am technologically challenged. I may need that full 10 minutes just to get logged on. But colleagues, thank you. I'll see you in executive session in about 10 minutes. And for the rest of you, one of us, Ms. Smith or I, will return to gavel out after we complete the executive session. The time is now 11:44, and we stand in recess.
Commission met in the web-based video conference for closed session from 11:54 a.m. until 12:27 a.m. on items 40 and 41 as posted and noticed pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074. No action was taken. The agenda stands adjourned. The time is 12:30.